The Bad Guys 2 is an animated action comedy directed by Pierre Perifel. It stars Sam Rockwell, Marc Maron, Craig Robinson, Anthony Ramos, Awkwafina, among a good few others. This is of course the sequel to the 2022 film The Bad Guys. The original movie is one of the better quality films from the company of DreamWorks. From what I noticed, DreamWorks have a more steady mixed bag of films, way more than Disney does anyway. I got quite a bit of enjoyment out of that original movie. It felt like a kid-friendly version of films like the Ocean trilogy, and even taking some inspiration, seemingly, from Tarantino flicks, which, as a self-proclaimed cinephile, is really cool to see in an animated film. So naturally, I was at least somewhat interested to see what this sequel would bring to the table. So with all that being said, just how exactly is the movie, and how does it compare to the first movie? Well, I'll tell you. I'm gonna start with the performances, since even though all we have in this movie is voice acting, it's still a form of acting I believe deserves just as much recognition as I would give regular performances. I'll start with Sam Rockwell, who provides the voice of Wolf, or the Big Bad Wolf, I guess is his alias in this movie. He does a good job at bringing this character to life, always carrying himself with the confidence of a leader through certain line deliveries, and there's certain times where his own insecurities, by the way he delivers the more emotional lines in the movie, really shines through that way. There's certain moments where he delivers monologues that Rockwell does that always manages to stay really engaging to listen to. Craig Robinson provides the voice of Shark. He's one of the more comedic characters in this group, and as far as comedy goes, he always manages to be very expressive, which most of the time garnered a smile and sometimes even a laugh out of me whenever he was on screen. The character's gimmick is that they are good at disguises, which sometimes means Robinson has to do different voices, all for the sake of comedy of course, but it's still impressive to hear him switch voice in quick succession when these scenes happen. Anthony Ramos provides the voice of Piranha, another comedic character. In fairness, most of the crew of the Bad Guys are all comedic characters, but some lean more into the comedy than others. Ramos's performance relies on him being more loud and brash, but not to an extent where it becomes annoying for some of the older people in the audience, like me of course. There's a lot of times where his dialogue and jokes will try to get your attention in the same way you jingle keys at a child. That sounds like an insult, I understand, but that's how I feel the character is written more than anything, and I think Ramos knows this, so with what he's given, he pulls this off well. Awkwafina voices Tarantula, for me probably the weakest of the group, simply just due to the fact that she voices the character. I'm not sure exactly how many times I've talked about Awkwafina on the channel, but she's just a comedy actress I've never got behind. I've never found her funny, and in this movie she isn't really that funny either. They do give her on paper comedic lines, but it's something about how she always delivers lines that just don't make any of the jokes she says all that funny, at least to me anyway. Zazie Beetz provides the voice of Fox, and I thought she did a good job with her role. It was cool to see her character develop from the last movie to this movie, and from her line delivery she made an effort to give her character the confidence that was needed. Along with the chemistry she has with Wolf, is also nice to see that the two of them bounce off each other really well. Danielle Brooks voices one of the new characters in this movie, who is called Kitty. I don't think this is a spoiler to say, but she is one of the antagonists in the movie, and I find it funny with this actress specifically because she was most recently in the Minecraft movie, where I thought she was one of the weakest side characters, which obviously is not her fault. That's down to the job of the incompetent writers that worked on that dog shit movie. But here I thought she did a good job at voicing a villain, as there were times where she came off as really threatening through the way she expresses her feelings towards characters when the protagonists try to foil her plans. You can hear the frustration to her voice. That frustration most likely came from being in the cast in the Minecraft movie. Moving on, I think I prefer the plot of this movie slightly more than the first one, as they give the characters a lot more to do here. The first half is good at showing where these characters end up after the first movie. It was interesting seeing the bad guys try reintegrate themselves into society. There's a good deal of comedic conflict there, and the interactions just felt natural between the team and the people they were meeting. It was a segment I really enjoyed in this. There's a lot of great scenes throughout the runtime, and seeing how the bad guys get roped into conflict after trying to be normal. All of the heist scenes are also done really well. They're really reminiscent of the Ocean's trilogy, as I've said, especially when these scenes come on screen. There's a couple of tropey things here and there, but it's standard stuff you'd see in any kids movie, so I can't complain there too much. Despite that though, the story here is good and well written for a sequel to an animated film. I was surprised to see in the writing they managed to sneak in some adult humor here, even including somewhat of a swear word, which is nothing new. Like, DreamWorks is used to putting that stuff in there now that I think about it. I now want to talk about the animation. I think for sure it's one of the highlights of this thing. The animation for this movie is gorgeous across the board. For the entire runtime, my eyes were pleased to see such vibrant colors mixed with such stylish character designs and other aspects where they integrate different forms of animation to make the overall feeling be more stylish. Towards the end of the movie, during the final act, there are really beautiful moments in the animation where the lighting especially look great. Clearly, with all of this, there is such a talented team working on this. It's great to see the care and attention to detail put into this work. Naturally, with a kids movie like this, there is a good bit of reference humor, including references to movies and things that kids might not fully understand. For example, there's a company in this movie titled Moon X, which is clearly meant to be a spin on the real life SpaceX, which is Elon Musk's company. Sadly, the billionaire in this movie isn't really a piss take of Musk, but at least they snuck in some reference to kinda shit on him. I won't say what specifically is referenced, but there is a segment in a scene which references a horror movie, which was surprising to see, and while I rolled my eyes at its conclusion, I will admit I did catch myself smiling at the same time, as it was fun to see done here, just for the absurd way that they take this. The music in this movie is composed by Danielle Pemberton, who is known for composing music for the Spider-Verse movies. The music in this movie is pretty good. Anytime there's a chase scene, the songs are energetic and thrilling to listen to. Most of the tracks give off the impression that they would fit nicely in a spy film, which is basically what these movies are at the end of the day. For some of the other scenes, all of the tracks suit the scenes that they are used in. I briefly also want to touch on the sound design, as there is a point during the third act, which if I want to talk about it, I'll have to get into very brief spoilers. They might show this in the trailer, I'm not fully sure, but just to mention that the bad guys go to space to stop the villain plot, and while they're in space, the sound design is done really well. There's a few stretches of silence which works for the space setting. Whenever the characters speak to each other, their dialogue is muffled since they're all wearing space helmets. It seems like something that isn't that worthy of note, but it's cool to see this attention to detail put into such a small aspect of this movie. Overall, I actually quite like this movie. After its first viewing, I do prefer it over the first movie, but in fairness, I haven't seen that first movie in about 2-3 years, I think. So maybe if I watched the two back to back, that opinion could change. Something to note with these movies, specifically with the first movie, a lot of the humor relied on fart jokes, which is very present in a lot of kids movies. There was quite a lot in the original, but it didn't spoil my enjoyment too much. They weren't exactly done tastefully, but it didn't spoil the overall movie. There's at least 3 of those types of jokes in this movie, so it's nice to see that they're correcting one of the more weaker aspects of that first movie. If this consistency in a franchise keeps up, I can safely say, in terms of DreamWorks movies in the 20s, I think it could be one of their great new franchises. It seems like they are pretty proud of these characters and what they've done with the stories, which is nice to see. I'm giving The Bad Guys 2 4 stars. It's a really well voice acted, gorgeously animated, and well written caper, which will be a great time for families both old and young. There really is something here for everybody, which is always nice to see. The character designs are all really memorable. On top of that, the way the characters are written make for an entertaining time with both of these movies, and especially here. DreamWorks in general, while they have their share of bad movies, do have a decent output, way more than whatever the fuck Disney is doing recently, that's for sure. This movie is currently in theaters, and I think for the quality it's given, it's definitely worth watching on the big screen.